you have that skill set. Now, you and I both know that at times in your life, whether that time is now or in the past, there has been some reluctance to doing so. Today, I have who I believe is our industry's foremost expert on this topic of how to overcome call reluctance. And we're going to be interviewing him, going in depth as to how you can overcome your fear of the phone. Guys, this episode today has the ability to unlock so much potential for you. This is going to be an amazing episode. I'm excited to have you all here. Thank you for joining us on this New Year's episode. It's going to be awesome. Talk soon. Here we go. The big question is this: how do those of us in the real estate industry with crazy amounts of ambition, how do we think bigger than the building of our own empires? How do we simultaneously seek success and significance, income and impact? My name is Justin Stoddard, and this is the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. Welcome back, everybody, to the Think Bigger Real Estate Show, first episode of 2023. Let's freaking go! I'm fired up about this episode. You guys, I have someone who's become not only a mentor and coach of mine, but he's become actually a very good friend. Wally Bressler.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you on the show today, my friend.
Pleasure to be here, my friend. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Let me just, I'm going to read some of your bio points. I think it's important for people to know who we're talking to. For those that don't know, Wally has been in the industry, 26 years, something like that.
25 this year.
Was elected as, or nominated as Success Magazine's one of their top 125 most influential people in our industry. He also has over 40,000 coaching sessions under his belt. 40,000. So he knows a thing or two. I want to share a quick story. In fact, let me just say again, thank you for being here, Wally, on this episode.
Me, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
I want to just start off with a story that you helped me to unlock, right? So I'm a guy who is very relational and also very ambitious. I built a model that really favors warm market, and it actually favors going and finding people who are upstream from a transaction, right? People who have the ability to send you a lot of business in a hurry. So that's something that I teach, that I coach to. And I know that many of the people who I interact with, who I even coach, have challenges at times picking up the phone and calling warm market people. Now, I'm grateful that I can't say that I've never had that feeling before, but I do know that calling people cold, or even people when they're totally unexpecting it, is challenging for me. And I know you and I had a conversation. It was probably a 3 to 5 minute conversation. It wasn't long, where you began to uncover for me really quickly in a matter of minutes. You were like, I think that's probably it. And I was like, wow, I think you're right. What we uncovered, you guys, was that I had in my early years a very bad speech impediment. I stuttered, an awful stutter problem. Like I couldn't speak. And I recognized not only was it painful for me, but it was painful for other people who were there. And I associated that when I talked, I was going to make people feel uncomfortable. And so I had this inside of me that was keeping me from talking to as many people and opening as many opportunities as I now have the ability to do so. And I give credit to Wally for helping me to see that and do that. So I know firsthand the magic of what you do for people. And I'm excited and honored that you'd come on the show.
I appreciate that. And thanks for the kind words and for sharing the story. You know, at the end of the day, you still had to do the work. You know what I'm saying? Even though I identified it, it didn't exactly solve the problem. There's some things you had to go through, but you said, you know, in the last month or two, we've been working together, that it's really changed everything for you, with not just your ability to call people, but how you feel about it and whatnot. So super excited for you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's delve right into this, because again, I think the big problem that people have, right, is there's this reluctance to pick up the phone and call people. Many people are referral-based and they don't think they need to call people, right? Or they go referral-based because they don't want to call people. There's other people who are prospecting-based who know they have to call people. And people on both sides of that aisle, or maybe they have a hybrid business, right, where they do both. There's reluctance in those people. In fact, I would imagine the people that are watching here live and people that are going to listen to this afterwards are like, if they're really honest with themselves, they would agree that, excuse me, not at all times, they don't always feel comfortable picking up the phone. Why is that, Wally? Why are we afraid of something that really can't hurt us? What causes that?
Plastic and metal. So as a point of clarification, you know, there's some people are okay talking to people they don't know, but would not want to talk to people they do know. Some people would rather talk to people they do know rather than people they don't know. And some people don't want to talk to anybody. So there's, you know, 3 categories of people. So it's not this that people are afraid of. Okay. It's not the phone itself. What it is that 65% of all salespeople have a very strong need for approval. And it's okay, because needing to be included, needing to be approved of, needing to be wanted, those are all perfectly normal things to feel. But when that need for approval, that need for acceptance gets to the point where it impedes your ability to have a good relationship with somebody, or do the things you need to do to enjoy a happy life, or do the things you need to do in order to, build a great business for yourself, that's when it becomes a problem, right? And so, and we talk about triggers. The name of my company is the Trigger Sales System, trigger habits to help you overcome your blocks. What happens is there are negative triggers, and these negative triggers, basically what they've done for most people who have call reluctance, is that they've triggered their fight or flight response. And in most cases, it's a flight response. And it comes from, you could have experienced some sort of trauma as a child, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. You could have been bullied. You couldn't have made an observation when you looked at somebody and said, geez, I'm poor, and created a poverty consciousness. Your parents could have been alcoholics and they never poured into you, or your parents fought all the time. And strangely enough, we talked about this too, even people whose parents never fought impacts people too, because people never learned how to deal with, confrontation or something where they're going to get leaned back on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so over time, as they've grown older, every time something came up that triggered that flight response, it reinforced for them that they're not going to do things where they're not going to be approved of, where they're not going to be accepted, where they're going to be rejected, where they feel like, hey, I don't want to sound salesy. That's just fear of not being accepted or approved of. Does that make sense? Totally. And so, and it happens between the time we're born, a little later, up until the time we're like 12 or 13. I had call reluctance for 10 years, and I had, binge eating disorder since the age of 6. I was sexually abused when I was 10. That really is terrible for people's, emotional and mental health. I started looking at pornography at the age of 11. I started having sex at the age of 12. I was bullied for the first 13 years of my life. So by the time I was 14, I did not like myself. I had no self-esteem, and I had lots of unresolved issues, and who I talked to nobody about. They couldn't figure out why I was in the principal's office every other day. Your mom's a teacher in the school system. You should really be doing a better job. You know what I'm saying? And meanwhile, I have all these unresolved issues. And so what happened is I was afraid of everything. And so, when these triggers come up, we get ready to go make a phone call. And then all of a sudden, as Rick Carson calls it, your gremlin comes up and says, oh, no. We don't make calls. We don't do these things, and interestingly enough, Justin, the same reason people don't pick up the phone is the same reason they don't keep a calendar. It's the same reason they don't stick to a diet. It's the same reason they don't stick to a gym regimen. It's the same reason that they have, all these goals that they've created that they've never reached. It's the same thing that has dust, collecting on people's vision boards, right? It's all the same thing. It's this low self-esteem, this low self-worth, this need for approval that gets in the way. Now, I'm not one of those people. I don't think we have self-esteem. I don't think if we have low self-esteem in one area, we have it. It's low everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, you put me in front of a group of people to speak, high self-esteem, coaching, high self-esteem, cooking, high self-esteem, being a ballerina, low self-esteem, right? Being a jockey for a horse, low self-esteem, right? So, it varies, but, in this arena, it's that, and here's the thing, it doesn't make us bad people. And here's the thing, it's not anybody's fault. It's not even their fault that they have call reluctance. It's just that all those things happened when they were a kid and nobody showed them how to deal with those emotions so that they could just resolve them and move on.
Isn't that interesting, Wally, and I hope everybody that's listening here has given yourself permission to be honest with yourself, number one, to say, yeah, I have a legitimate fear of the phone. And also in a conjunction with that I believe my opportunities in life would be bigger, and maybe many of the struggles you're facing right now would either be smaller or non-existent if you did not have that reluctance. Okay, that's the first thing we need to be honest with, is that there's real repercussions to what we're facing here. The second thing is that you're probably the reason why you have that, because the phone, as you said, in and of itself, it's an inanimate object. It can't actually hurt us. It's not like it's a bomb, right? It can't actually blow up and hurt us. So the reason why we are responding in the way that we are is because something happened in our youth, typically in our developmental years, that caused us to have some sort of fear of other people, right? Or some overextended need to have their approval. Is that what I'm hearing you say? And because of that, we are unwilling to put ourselves in conversations with people for fear that we'll experience that similar pain that we experienced when we were younger. Is that?
Yeah, I think that sums up nicely. It's all about avoidance strategies, right? We get triggered, and T. Harv Eker calls it TFAR: thoughts, feelings, actions, results. get a thought. There's a trigger that comes in, right? And then there's an associated feeling that comes with that. And then usually there's an action. Sometimes it's inaction, which is still an action, and then we get a result. What a lot of people do, and what I did, I was addicted to sex, pornography, food, and money for 40 plus years. I would get the trigger, but then I would skip the feeling. I'd go right to eating or watching pornography or wasting money. You see what I'm saying? And so, but here's the thing: there's other things that are avoidance strategies that are not addiction, that don't appear to be an addiction, but being a perfectionist is an avoidance strategy. And procrastination is an avoidance strategy, and engaging in cleaning like crazy is an avoidance strategy, and not just overeating, but eating to not have to deal with something is an avoidance strategy, right? And all of those things come up in an effort to not have to deal with the pain that comes along with potentially putting ourselves in a position where we can be rejected. Is that fair?
Man, yeah, it's so powerful. And number one, I want to thank you for being really vulnerable. I remember when I sat through a seminar at one point where a very successful looking gentleman who didn't need to share his story shared his story about being a convicted felon. And it was like, at that moment,
I got that covered too.
So you think about like the stuff that oftentimes we kind of hide, that we're kind of embarrassed of, you just laid out on the table for everybody. And I think it's powerful for those of us in the audience to say, you know what, each and every one of us are human, and there are things that we're not proud of. And the more that we can bring those to light. Now, I'm not necessarily saying you need to go to a Wally Bressler level of authenticity and transparency. We're probably not ready for that yet, to be able to say on a live show, here's like all the skeletons in my closet. But at least admit to yourself that you've done some things that haven't been in the best interest of you and those around you. I think once you start to do that, you really get honest with yourself, it starts a trend of not hiding from stuff, right? Of not hiding from what may keep me from picking up the phone and calling people, right? So at one level.
I think to your point, we talk about triggers and not just being aware of what triggers us, but what's the source of all of this insanity? I'm saying? If I can become aware of exactly what's creating all these problems, I can solve the problem, right? I can't hit a target I can't see. I can't overcome an enemy that I can't fight. But once and it does require, like you said, it requires honesty. In fact, it requires radical honesty. It doesn't require you accepting responsibility for things you didn't do. I'm saying? I mean, I just had a talk with somebody who was 8 years old and kind of blames himself for being sexually abused by a family member. I'm like, you're 8. Not only could you not fight this person off, but you probably didn't even know to fight them off. You know what I'm saying? And so it's not accepting responsibility for things you didn't do, but it is accepting, it's being honest for what you did and owning it at the highest level. You know what I'm saying? Like I went to federal prison. I was a dummy and I got connected with somebody and I looked the other way on stuff I shouldn't have. I wasn't trying to steal money, but I wasn't exactly trying to prevent it from happening either. You know what I'm saying? I've blown $5 million. I was unfaithful to my ex-wife 4 times. I put all my kids in a tough place. You know what I'm saying? Like I did it. And the thing is you can't make that change until you're honest with yourself. But I think, it's interesting. I think the reverse of what we're thinking is going to happens. We think we tell people something and they're going to go ahead and say, oh, shame on you, tis bad boy. When you're vulnerable and you own it, especially when a lot of people can't do that, you get tons of respect from people, amazing responses from people, tons of empathy, right? Because the fact of the matter is and this is how Kristen Neff, she's a doctor, and her specialty is we talked about this, is about self-compassion, is that, people want to offer, in most cases, compassion and empathy to other people because they've probably gone through the same thing that you have. You know what I'm saying? She calls it common humanity. Like there's so many people that have been sexually abused. There's so many people that have been physically abused. There's so many people that have had horrible things happen to them that we could go ahead and put 10 people in a room and you'd be able to identify with at least 1 or 2 of those people with something you did. And when you do that, not only does it connect you with people, but it makes them more empathetic to what you're going through. It connects you with them, but it also gives you the opportunity to feel like you're not the only one going through it. Is that fair?
I have to bring something up right now that comes to mind. So my family and I have been binge watching the show The Chosen. Now, regardless of your spiritual connection, I'm going to share a kind of a correlation here that I'm seeing. Is that, again, whatever you believe about Jesus Christ, like that's your belief, right? But in that show, at the very beginning episode, a gal who's literally possessed by demons, right? And lives a pretty awful life up to that point, later becomes like one of his confidants, like is traveling with him. And it's so interesting to see how a human can transform. And again, however you believe that happens, that's yours.
Yes.
But I do believe that people can change. One of my favorite quotes, there was a famous prison warden who was quoted as somebody had approached him and said, "Don't you know that leopards don't, or that tigers don't change their stripes?" In other words, all these people in here are bad. Like, what are you doing? Spend all this time trying to change these people. And his response was, "Yes, but I don't work with tigers. I work with humans, and humans change every day." And I think, again, we started down the path of phone call reluctance and have gone much deeper than that, which I thank you for being such an authentic human being to be able to share that. But I think at any level, the very first step is to recognize that I'm not, like, I need to be better at this. If I'm going to be in a sales-led profession like real estate, not being able to pick up the phone and call somebody is a problem. We should not brush that under the rug, because in this market, in this economy, it might be the end of your dream. It might be the end of your career if you don't overcome this. Like, it's that important, folks. Maybe you could get away with not having this skill set in years past when everything was selling. But I don't believe you can just brush stuff like this under the rug and move forward thinking that your business is going to be okay in this existing market.
I would agree. And I had a thought and I lost it. I guess I'll have to come back to it. But
while you're thinking about it, we'll take the next step here. What is it? You got it. Go.
Okay, sorry. You had said it's about call. It's never about the phone. You know what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with the phone, like we talked about. It is call reluctance, but it's all internally driven. It is not your fault, but through the power of neuroplasticity, which is the ability to rewire your brain, you can change. Everybody can change. I've had people go through my class who are 18, people who are 40. I had somebody who was 60, somebody who was 70, who all made the changes they needed to make, no matter what happened in their life and how long ago it was to make the changes. So you always have the ability to make the change. I mean, I didn't start working on myself until 50. You know what I'm saying? I was like 49, 50 years old, and they started doing the work at 50. Wow. So it can absolutely happen that way. The other thing is people are all, I got to do social media, I got to do videos. Yeah, you do. Right? You need a presence online. You absolutely need a presence online. That's what's going to validate you. That's going to give you authority and credibility. But I don't care if let's use a football metaphor. Your video is going to get people to the 5-yard line. You still got to punch it into the end zone. The only way you're going to do that is picking up the phone and having a call with them and building a relationship with them. Only 3 to 5% of the business we get on any given day is now business. The rest of it needs to be nurtured. Right? We've got to talk to them. We've got to build relationships with that. So even if I get them to say, hey, I'm interested, once I talk to them, I've got to get them on the phone. I've got to get an appointment with them. You know what I'm saying? And so you still are going to have to use the phone. The phone's not going anywhere. And I've done some research, and on average, up to half of the people in the 3 biggest demographics that make up the United States, was millennial, Gen X, and baby boomers. Almost half of each one of those demographics want to talk to somebody prior to making a big purchase. So they're going to want to talk to you.
Yeah, I think it's the realization that this needs to be overcome, and it can be overcome, right? So let's talk about that. Well, let's talk about what are the steps to overcoming this. Like how would you start? Now, let me just preface this by saying, for any that are like, I got to talk to this guy because I realize this skill set is not is costing me so much money every month. I'm going to put in the chat, while you're answering my question, Wally, of how do people take the first steps. I'm going to put in the chat a link to your calendar. Get on Wally's calendar, spend a few minutes with him, and just see if there's something there. See if there's a connection, some alignment that will help you get unstuck from this. So anyway, go ahead, Wally. What's the first step in overcoming this? I'll post this link inside the chat.
Yeah, listen, sign up for 15 minutes. I guarantee you that if we talk for 15 minutes, I'll tell you exactly why you're not able to pick up the phone, or why you can't get in front of a video camera, or why you sabotage your business, or whatever it is. If you give me 15 minutes, I will tell you exactly where it comes from. So step 1 is awareness, right? Can't solve a problem that I don't know exists. So I've got to go and figure out, what is it that's keeping me from picking up the phone or not doing the things I need to do to be successful, whether it's personally or professionally. I have my clients, you've done this, you could get a couple of note cards and says, what is causing me to have call reluctance? That's it. And it's interesting because for you hadn't really thought about the whole stuttering thing until we worked on it. And also just, I did stutter when I was a kid. And I was like, bingo, you know what I'm saying? And so your brain remembers everything you've ever tasted, touched, smelled, heard, or seen. It remembers it all. It stacks it in a big sandwich. And a lot of times we push it down because it's painful, but it's all in there. And so when you ask your subconscious, hey, what's this come from? It is more than happy to tell you, because your brain wants certainty. It wants clarity. Its job is to keep you alive and to keep you at peace. And so it's going to serve up to you whatever it needs to serve up to you so you can resolve that. So the first step is awareness. The second step is letting these feelings come up. I call it The second one, so it's awareness, and then it's define and identify, and then it's become mindful, right? So now that we've got awareness of what the problem is, now we have to be aware every time the feeling comes up, right? Because a lot of folks, they skip that emotion. They go right to whatever, perfectionism, procrastination, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is. I'm going to let that feeling come up. I'm going to say, okay, this is anxiety. This is where the anxiety comes from. And then I'm going to become mindful. And mindfulness is nothing more than just focusing on the present. If I think about the future and all the bad things that can happen, I get scared. I get anxious, right? If I think about the past and I think about all the bad things that happen, I get sad and depressed. But if I'm focusing right now on the present and just letting these emotions come through, I can feel neither of those things. A real simple tip is it's called box breathing. You just inhale for a count of 4. You hold for a count of 4, you exhale for a count of 4, you hold for a count of 4, and just do that. If you feel yourself getting anxious, if you feel yourself starting to go off the rails, just start doing some box breathing. Eventually, you'll disconnect from your fight or flight instinct, and then you'll reconnect with your what they call rest or digest. The reason that you get a dry mouth and a pounding heart and a light head and all these other things when you go to pick up the phone, it's because your fight or flight instinct kicks in. When your fight or flight instinct kicks in, your saliva glands get turned off, and your adrenaline gets kicked in, which also I think helps create a dry mouth. Your digestive system doesn't shut down, but it goes down to minimum. Your bladder gets released, and your lungs, the bronchi, they actually expand. So if you have to fight or run, you're prepared to do that to have the energy. And the connection between fight or flight and what they call rest and digest is literally just breathing. And if you can do that, mindfulness and breathe, you'll take yourself out of freaking out mode. Okay. Once you do that, we've got to go ahead and rewire our brains, and that's when we get into morning rituals. I'm a big fan of Hal Elrod's The Miracle Morning, right? 6-step process, 10 minutes a day. He calls them savers. So it's scribing, which is journaling. A is for affirmations, self-love affirmations are helpful. V is for visualization. So visualizing, what you want to be like, what you want to see. E is for exercise, R is for reading, and then S is for silence. I'm a big fan of mindful meditation, which really works in that mindfulness, because that mindfulness is what rewires your brain and keeps things that normally bother you from bothering you, right? Does that make sense?
It totally does. Yeah,
and
you
then,
helped me walk through that again. It's awesome.
Yeah. And then the last thing next thing is deciding what you want, how to really get what you want, and I'm a big fan of Daniel Pink, which is, let's not use carrot and stick motivation. Let's go ahead and go with, what's autonomy look like? What does my life look like when I'm living my best life the way I want to? And then what do I have to master to make that happen? And then the last step is finding out what your why is, right? People are like, oh, a car is a why. My kids are a why. A car is a what? Your kids are a who. They're not a why, but your why could be, I grew up with no money, and I'm going to make sure that my kids never have to worry about money again. So I'm going to learn to pick up the phone and do what I have to make sure my kids never have to worry about money. That's a why. So just to recap, it's awareness, and then it's awareness every time that emotion comes up. Those emotions come up, combined with define and identify, and then mindfulness, and then rewiring your brain through morning rituals, especially like the ones in the Miracle Morning. And then going ahead and thinking about what you want, like what does autonomy look like? What does my life look like when I'm living it the way I want to? What do I have to master to make that happen? And then what is my why? Okay. And believe it or not, you can do that in like 2 months. It's crazy. I mean, think about how old you are and how long you had carried this burden of feeling less than or judged or whatever from having a stuttering problem. And it took you like 2 weeks to realize it, to get to the point where you could pick the phone up, right? I mean, some people it takes longer, but usually for most people it's 8 weeks. It's crazy.
Something you said that I don't know if you meant to say, but I caught it. You said the point of picking up the phone is to create relationships. I believe that when our mind is playing tricks on us, we believe that we're destroying when we pick up the phone. Like we're going to ruin a relationship. We're going to ruin somebody's day by interrupting them at what they do. Like our frame and our narrative is, I'm coming in to disrupt, right? I'm coming in to cause somebody to be unhappy. And we don't want that, especially as people pleasers. Many of us are. We don't want to cause discomfort. We don't want to ruin. We don't want to destroy friendships, relationships, everything. And so I think getting the right frame is, no, I'm here to build. I'm here to create relationships. I'm here to create value for you. Right. And the whole purpose of your conversation is exactly that. It's not to take. It's to come to give, right? To give value, to give service, to give advice, to give counsel. And that's helped me, right? To really be clear of like, what am I doing? Am I calling to like tell someone that they're an awful person? No, I'm calling to like help them, to serve them, to help them have an amazing business. Okay, great. Let's pick up the phone and call them. That sounds awesome. That's aligned with who I am. Great. Let's do it.
And that changes the meaning in your head all day long. To your point, though, we as a society need to relieve ourselves of the responsibility for other people's feelings and thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
My feelings are not your responsibility; they're my responsibility. If I get mad at you, even if I reject you, my rejecting you has nothing to do with you. It has to do with what I like. I call it my theory of Brussels sprouts. You like Brussels sprouts?
Depends if there's enough butter. Yes.
Enough butter, right? Yeah. You put bacon and onions and maple syrup and oil, and you crisp them. They taste great. Like you do that to a sandal, and make it taste good. So the whole point is, if you have to do that much to a Brussels sprout to make it taste good, it can't taste that good to begin with. But the fact of the matter is you like them with enough butter. I don't like them, period. But is it the Brussels sprout, or is it you or me? Or you or I? It's us, right?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the Brussels sprout, because and we're Brussels sprouts. Some people are going to like us and some people aren't. But when you're a pleaser and you take so much personal responsibility for other people's happiness and other people's well-being, when you realize it's their responsibility, what I'm saying? I can do things that make people happy, but it's up to them to be happy with it, right? So when we relieve ourselves of that responsibility and realize that we can only do our best every day, and for some people our best is going to be good enough and for others it's not, there's a truckload of freedom in that. And then when you tack onto that, what you were talking about, listen, I'm building relationships here. I mean, we talked about this before. You have 300-400 people. You had Jay Papazon, and like if you look at your beginning, you have Jay Papazon, you have Uncle G there. You got a lot of people who are heavy hitters in their industry who are kind enough to get on your podcast and build a relationship with you, who likely know who you are now and will take a phone call from you. And if you call them, number one, you have the power of reciprocity at your disposal, right? Mm-hmm. For them and for you, but and because you got them some additional publicity as well. But in addition to that, they know you. And so if you call them and say, listen, I'm working on this and I would love to make something where the two of us can benefit from it, not everybody's going to say yes, but more people than not will say yes, just because of the relationship aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome stuff, Wally. I think I'm hoping that everybody that's tuned in today has gotten something from this, because all of us, just what you described to me, like, why don't I pick up the phone and call Grant?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you want to, if I may, if you want to continue to stay in touch with me and see some of the other stuff that I post on a regular basis, you can just go to Phone Sales Secrets on Facebook and join the group. I am rebranding my company and my name, and things will change. But right now, do that. And then again, go to calendly.com/Coach Wally. We'll have a no cost, no obligation consultation. You spend 15 minutes with you. I'll tell you exactly why you're not able to get on the phone or do consistently what you need to do or have good relationships with people or anything related to getting in front of the phone or on it and getting in front of a camera on the phone.
That's awesome. Wally, I've got one more question for you that everybody gets asked that comes across the Think Bigger real estate stage, which is this: you're a big thinker. Your impact is stretching to the four corners. Tell me, what does Wally do to continue to be a big thinker, to continue to expand your possibilities? What does that look like for you?
What do I do to be a big thinker? I think really what it comes down to for me is to realize that, I think it's kind of a trite saying, but what got me here today is going to get me to where I need to be. And I think what's driving me now is that I don't want people to have to hit rock bottom like I did to make the changes they want and need in their life. Does that make sense? Like, number one is making sure that I create a life for my kids that was significantly better than I had. But secondarily is to do that, anybody who's willing to listen and talk to me, I will go ahead and explain to them how they can deal with whatever they need to deal with so that they don't have to wait until they're ready to put a gun in their mouth like I was to go ahead and create a great life for themselves. And I think those two things are driving me to get my message out, to talk to more and more people, to be a bigger thinker of how can I get in front of more people to help them so that they don't have to do the things that I did. And basically, and I'll leave you with this. I remember when I started, I hired a counselor, finally a therapist who I connected with and talked to her twice a week for 2.5 years. That's how bad it was, but I just knew I needed help at that point. But I remember one of the first days we met, she goes, tell me about the happiest day of your life. And I thought about it she literally sat there for 10 minutes and said nothing. And I realized that I had never had one happy day in my life. And I was 50. I was 50 years old and I couldn't think of one happy day for my life. And now as I think back, as I'm talking to people, I don't want anybody to have to go another day without thinking about something they were happy about. And that's really, I think, what's helping me think big and how I can get in front of as many people as possible so they don't have to have another day where they don't feel like they're good people and where they deserve or worthy of great things.
Powerful stuff, Wally. I want to thank you again so much for all you've shared here today. Again, for those that are listening in and you want some help seeing if there's something that's keeping you, and I guarantee that there is.
Yep.
Schedule a few minutes with Wally; it'll be worth your time. And
Sure.
appreciate it, Wally. And to all those listening, I have one more invitation tomorrow. I'm doing It's Not Too Late. That's the name of it. Business planning session for those of you that have been hibernating up until now. I'll put a link in the show notes, or reach out to me, DM me, and I'll send you the link privately. You'll walk out with a fully completed business plan, ready to go and hit the ground running. So be sure and do that. Join us in the Think Bigger Real Estate Facebook group. And my final request of everybody listening here today are these 3 simple words, and they are go think bigger. Wally, thanks for helping us do that today, my friend.
Thanks, brother. Take care. Good luck. Take care, everybody.
See you.
Thanks.
Be honest, hearing good ideas is not enough. You have to apply them in order to get the results desired. If you found value in today's episode, then you're really going to love the community of big thinkers and high achievers that we are building in order to help you to apply the principles taught today. If you're not yet a member of Think Bigger Real Estate on Facebook, go